Welcome to Steward Leaders, a podcast for leaders who understand that our leadership is not about us. I'm Eric Alexander. In these conversations, we explore what it means to lead as stewards, living our leadership for something bigger than ourselves. Listeners, thanks for joining us today, and hello to you again, Ash, for another Steward Leaders conversation.
Hi, Eric. Delighted to be back again. Thank you for having me.
The last conversation was great, so grateful you're making time for this one as well. Let me tell the listeners a little bit about Ash first. If you missed the first one, don't pass go, don't collect $200. Go listen as soon as you finish this one. Here's a little bit about Ash. He works for the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, where he's the Vice President and Managing Director of Learning, Education, and Development, and he has a deep finance background. He's served in the CFO seat. He's a CPA. He's an avid aviator. He's a nice man. You'll enjoy getting to hear from Ash. So, nice man is tame. It doesn't quite capture the vibrancy that is Ash. So, hello, Ash. So glad you're here.
Absolutely, Eric. Delighted to be picking up this conversation again. In my role, I am constantly faced with how do we prepare the next generation of finance professionals that are coming through the pipeline of our qualification. The Chartered Global Management Accountant is the qualification and the designation that I am managing. My team does the research. They do the development of the learning and the exams, and all the from design to develop and delivery of the exams and the learning is done by my team. And one of the things that constantly occupies us are the competencies of the future, and all the competencies we talk about around the business competencies, leadership competencies, around technical competencies, digital competencies. You think about all of this, and underlying all of this is the need for stewardship,
Yes.
the competency of being the trusted advisor, the competency of being able to be the independent voice in the room, which manages conflicts of interests, manages conflicting pressures in order to make decisions. And so as we go into this world where we see more and more data being available, more and more automation through AI, driving decision making and driving behaviors, the need for humans to be in the lead
Yes.
and for finance to be those stewards is even more heightened.
So I want to tell leaders that's powerful context. I'm going to give them a little bit of context for how we got connected and why we're even having the conversation today. Uh, Ash has been as part of his role there at the ICPA, he's been involved in a revision for a document I found about 10 years ago called the Global Management Accounting Principles. We talked about that on the prior episode. And the thing that really jumped out at me from that document was stewardship develops or builds trust, and how
Mm,
important
mm.
stewardship is in a management accounting role, in any accounting and finance role. So we explored that in the last episode. As we were getting ready for today, Ash was talking to me about, and here's my thoughts on how on AI and how that is coming to bear, just like he mentioned, coming to bear for finance people, for accounting people. How do we deal with that? How do we navigate in this world with all these new things technologically that are going on? So I'll just let you go. We want to talk about opportunities, risks, and then suggestions for finance professionals. So
So, Eric, coming out of COVID, we heard about a world that we were entering, and even before COVID, and we all termed it VUCA, the
mm,
VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And as if that wasn't enough, we have continued down this road of fast-paced changes, things that are predictable are not predictable anymore. And if you think about two axes, one with certainty, highly certain on the bottom and very uncertain on the top, and agreement on the bottom. This is the Stacy's matrix. We are far from agreement and far from certainty. And we are in a really complex world, which is now, we are calling it a Barney world, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So we've moved even further up the complexity chain. And when you think about the two fundamental roles of finance, one being business guidance and the other being business governance, both of these pillars of our roles are impacted when you think about AI and how AI is impacting the world around us. So when a survey was done pre-COVID by the Corporate Executive Board, CEB, now it's part of Gartner, and what they were saying is there was a governance gap of about 10%, which means what businesses required as governance structures, compliance, accuracy of reporting, etc. Finance was meeting 90% of those needs, and there was a 10% gap. And then when it came to business guidance, the gap was 65% in terms of the amount of complexity and business decision making, and what the businesses required. Finance was only meeting 35% of it. So massive gap, massive opportunity. Fast forward 10 years on, 2026, we have more complexity, but we do have access to more data, we have more technology, we have more ability to interrogate that data and use that data for decision making. So some of the decision making is being assisted, augmented by AI. But when it comes to governance, what we will be seeing, and I can get into a little bit more depth as we go, the need for governance and that governance gap is going to increase. So it's going to flip. We are going to see better business guidance because we have better power to analyze, get insights, create scenarios, guide the businesses through AI. But the governance that will be required in deployment of AI, how AI is positioned and used in the business, whether it's used ethically, whether we are doing the right thing by our customers, our suppliers, and our other stakeholders, all those guardrails around decision rights and how governance is structured across the organization, it's going to be disrupted by AI. So we are going to be playing catch up on the AI governance side, whilst we are actually perhaps improving on the business guidance side. So at a very high level, those are how AI will impact the future world. And then we can clearly see the need for greater governance, the need for greater stewardship over the deployment of AI and over the areas where AI will be used by the business.
So as you mentioned stewardship, it has an inherently human aspect to it. A machine can't be a steward. A machine can help me be a steward. A machine can be an appropriate deployment of resources for an organization for our stewardship. But I cannot envision a world where finance is totally automated and there's no human involvement.
Absolutely, exactly on the money there. If you think about business governance, I am saying AI will require us to have new control systems. And if you think about AI capability and you think about the need for governance, the need for stewardship on these two axes, there will be, I call it the stages of human and AI interaction. So the first phase obviously is human in the loop. Um, you have a clear gate, and the human is at the gate, allows something to happen or not, and that's human in the loop. And that's where AI capability is quite low. We need humans in the loop. You then can move on to human on the loop, where AI is able to automate to a certain degree things like policy enforcement, triggering exceptions, escalating exceptions, where you can embed some of the workflow controls. AI is highly capable, and the human judgment is not as high as the previous case. And so we have humans on the loop rather than in the loop, where humans can oversee the operation of several AI agents. Um, but where you need a really high level of human judgment and you have very low AI capability, and those are things like how do we manage our risk appetite? What is our appetite? Defining that, the ethical accountability,
Yes.
the policies and governance over AI. I call that human in the lead. So
Mm,
you will have
mhm.
to have human, not in the loop, not on the loop, but human in the lead. And so we have to understand capability of AI. We have to understand the risks of AI. We have to understand where AI should be applied and not, and what type of AI.
Mhm.
Things like probabilistic AI and deterministic AI. If we don't understand the difference between probabilistic and deterministic AI, we won't really properly um, leverage AI in the right places. So when it comes to forecasting, when it comes to things that are predictive in nature, it's okay to use probabilistic AI when you're coming up with a range of outcomes.
Mhm. Mhm.
You can use it for scenarios, but you can't use probabilistic AI in general ledger accounting where you need the right number. 1 plus 1 in a deterministic system will always be 2.
Mhm.
Not in a probabilistic system, 1 plus 1 could be between 2 and 4. No,
Right.
that's not acceptable. So finance really needs to understand the types of AI, the controls required over AI, the governance systems over AI, where human needs to be in the loop, on the loop, and in the lead. And I think that's how I would fundamentally set up the plan on how you look at AI deployment across your enterprise.
So statistics was not my favorite class in college. I did okay in it, and I've used it along the way. But as I think about the 1 plus 1 equals, that would be one where when I think about the probabilistic range, my mean, my mode, my median, and my range all have to be the same number.
Exactly
It
right.
is what it is.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
as you're describing human in the loop, human over the loop, human is the loop, I forget what you called the third
Human in the
one,
lead. Yeah.
human in the lead, it makes me think of one of the things that has been part of leadership and stewardship through all time, which is how do we develop new leaders and how do we delegate? I'm thinking at a bank, you've got the new teller that comes in, and the teller supervisor is teaching the teller how to, on day one, how to balance the drawer, how the system works, how to make change, how to greet the customer. And there's this very tight feedback loop. And then the delegation over time will change where the teller supervisor is less and less having to interact because the person has figured it out. They develop the competence, the trust is already there. We know they're a person of character and they also know how to do their job. In a way, we need to make a similar assessment with the tool. It's not a character thing, it's a competence thing. Does this tool have the ability to do what we're asking it to? And it would seem for things, let me think about payables for a minute. Processing accounts payable. I can see lots of opportunity for the machines to come in and help the people get the payables paid. But when the CFO is doing personnel planning, doing personnel performance conversations, that needs to be a human conversation. We can't trust the machines to do that. Now, can they help us maybe analyze trends, analyze error rates, things like that? It seems the closer we get to the things that are most important to us, people, our mission and our values, our culture, AI falls farther and farther back into Humans definitely are in the lead here, must always be
Absolutely.
in the lead here.
Absolutely. I think where, if we continue on that example of accounts payable, at the end of that whole chain is a supplier and a relationship with the supplier
Yes,
and the strategic value of that supplier to the business.
yes.
Um, the decisions can be made by AI saying, well, there was a three-way match, invoice to be paid, but here we have a problem, we have a claim,
Mhm.
we need to escalate, and human gets involved. Um, you know, we can pay this invoice or we can hold this invoice. Um, but this supplier actually is dependent upon our organization because 80% of those supplies are coming to us.
Right.
And it is in our interest to keep the supplier afloat because
Yes.
without that supplier, you will have to go and look for another source, and it creates a risk in the system. That type of trade-offs, those type of scenario evaluations, in terms of the strategic value of the supplier to the business and the strategic nature of the relationship, you can't leave that to AI to make those determinations. Um, the level of payments that are made or the level of disputes and credit notes that need to be approved before we make the payment. All of those final determinations will be human-led.
Yes.
Um, and so to your point, clearly understanding where we can automate the rules, automate the flows, automate the payments, automate some of the dispute resolution. Yes, that's fine. But beyond the certain tolerance levels, the humans will have to very clearly be in the lead to make those type of determinations.
And what's very likely over time is my system in payables will be talking to my vendor's system in receivables. Funds will flow, simple dispute resolution will happen. Those efficiencies are powerful.
Absolutely.
But if something breaks, if there's a business need for an exception, we need people who are overseeing the process and monitoring what's going on in the process.
And you know from your past, and I know from my past, 80% of the time is taken up by 20% of the exceptions. And these exceptions, try as you may, cannot be rule-based and
Right,
so cannot be automated.
right.
And so the fear that we might have that, the accountant is going to be displaced is um, it's not as serious as we think it is. We always overestimate the impact um, of these type of technologies. The last one was when, the spreadsheet came out and they said, "Oh, it's the end of the accountants." I'm not saying AI is the spreadsheet, but AI is going to fundamentally change how business is conducted. It's a bit like the internet, changed everything. It started off with MySpace and an electronic presence, and now, business cannot be transacted if you're not online and if you not don't have a web presence and you don't have e-trade capability, e-payment capability, and AI is going that way, but it's just going to make our jobs different. And when you bring in the lens of stewardship, it's going to make the role of the accountant even more indispensable.
Yes.
And so when you look at the age of AI, you look at the automation, what it is going to remove is all the boring parts that I didn't want to do. Spend hours and hours trying to
Yes.
reconcile
Yes.
balance sheet accounts and control accounts, and all of that stuff is going to be automated, and it'll allow us to really focus on things of value, things that are generating value, things that are high risk, and it really will leverage our professional capability in more strategic and higher order thinking than transaction processing and reconciliations. And oh, I am so good at finding these differences, and I know exactly where to go. We won't need all of that
Right.
in the future.
Two concerns related to that. One is, and you mentioned the point about the exceptions and how those are dramatic. And there are times we have a basic process and there's a business reason for deviating from that. If we then make that, if the machine picks it up and then builds that into its set of rules, okay, now we have a change to our rule. That's not what we intended. We intended an exception to the rule. You keep processing the rules. Somebody needs to have visibility to what's going on inside the decisioning. So we in
Correct.
our governance cannot let the box turn black and just go
Yes.
do its thing and modify its own processes over time. That's
Right.
bad stewardship, that's bad
Right.
governance.
Right.
The
And
other
and
thing, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that really opens a window into the whole idea of machine learning, and what you're talking about there is unsupervised learning, where the machine learns on its own and changes the process and changes the workflow and changes an approval level. Um, you're exactly right. You can't allow that to happen. That type of machine learning has to be supervised by a human and allowed and released to a live environment once the humans perform those checks. So totally in agreement with how you position that. Can't let the machine go off and make these decisions. Exactly
Make
right.
its own rules.
Exactly right.
There can also be, okay, so I'm a lagging adopter of technology. There are times I joke about I hate technology except for 16th century technology. The printed page is a wonderful thing. And that's not true. We're using technology right now.
Right.
There are, on the other end of that distribution, there are people who are giddy adopters. Well, this is a little strong, but maybe mindlessly adopt some use cases where they are not adequately stewarding what their tool is doing. And in the finance world, that can lead into a dark and dangerous place where you don't know what's going on in your numbers. You don't know what's going on with your cash flow.
Yeah, it's best in these circumstances to wait for the AI tools that are provided on your platform, whether you're on QuickBooks or whether you're on SAP, or Zero or whichever program you're using. It's to wait for those providers to build in these AI tools is the best route to take to automation. And again, we are talking about things that are deterministic, things that need to be accurate, things that need to tie and match and balance. Um, yes, go and experiment in areas where perhaps you are flagging products that are early warning systems for reordering and ranges where you can add value by being on top of positioning the right product in the right warehouses and using intelligence where you're enhancing your customer experience by stores not running out of product and things like that. Understanding the use cases beyond finance in how you can give your customer a better experience will always add value, because
Yes.
you're providing a layer of service that the customer did not get before, or you're avoiding outages, or you're avoiding a bad service experience for the customer. And all those areas are more value accreting in terms of it impacts your top line, it impacts your revenue growth, it impacts your customer relationship and your ability to continue to have a lifetime value out of that customer. So I think finance needs to go beyond just their financial systems, also understand investment of AI and
Yes.
stewardship in where you're investing in AI so that you actually get the right returns. Trillions of dollars are being spent, and What we are seeing through surveys, etc., is the return is not there yet. But it doesn't mean there will not be no returns. Be careful about how you're investing in AI, and make sure your stewardship over that investment is
Yes.
appropriate. You understand why you're investing, and you maintain oversight over
Mhm.
how that investment is paying back over time. So another dimension of stewardship there, in terms of investing the enterprise's capital, capex.
Because it is a part of it's a part of our new reality.
Yeah,
Let's do it well in
exactly.
finance, and as finance participates in decisions about the larger business, the same there.
Yeah.
I've got another topic I want you to help me think about as it relates to stewarding human capabilities. I'll give an example. When I was at the bank, one of the things that there's a lot of at the bank is funds flowing around between out of people's accounts, in and out accounts, and to other banks and other places. So daily reconciliations of our primary accounts with millions and billions of dollars of funds flow was a big deal. And we were looking at some tools to help us, some early generation tools to help us with doing that. But we also had a team of expert people who knew the systems and the underlying transactions really well. The idea being, over time, the machine can begin to do, like you mentioned earlier, do the 80% that's just easy matches, and a human can intervene on the other 20. As the machine picks up more and more and more of that, you assume that the person that's overseeing that process has some deep knowledge from their experience. But if we scroll that forward 10 years or 20 years, where that person is now retired, and the system has been doing the easy bank recons all the time, how do we retain that human knowledge that will enable us to be good stewards supervising the machine?
It is a really critical point. I'm glad you brought that up because it is on top of everybody's mind. You have the experts today. They're the human in the loop. They are enabling the automation. They're humans on the loop, and eventually that human disappears and the machine continues. How does a new human who comes in oversee something they haven't been a part of? I would put my neck out and say, you cannot automate expertise. Expertise cannot be automated. Um, People are trying to do that, Eric. There are companies that are tracking individuals and asking them to log every decision they make, which is not documented, which is in their head. They're capturing the process of decision making of day-to-day functions that they execute on paper so that they can then build the programming, build their large language models, build that capability into machines. But you can only do that to a certain extent. And the future is around people who will continue to need to be exposed to that base level transaction end to end so that they have a very deep understanding of the process. So we have to distinguish between two processes. One is there are processes that will become redundant. And an example is, why would you continue to learn how to drive a stick shift if there is never ever, you know,
A stick shift.
if you're in automatic,
Right.
a stick shift is irrelevant. The automatic is not suddenly going to fail, and you need to, take over and start pressing the clutch and changing gears. It's
Mhm.
redundant. So we don't need to continue to teach
For
the
obsolete
people running the
processes.
process for ops. Yeah, exactly. But there are processes which continue to need oversight and intervention. And for that, the way we look at the future is we have to build simulations. The profession needs to build simulation tools to take people through T accounts. You have to understand
Yes.
a debit and a credit. You have to
Yes.
understand how a debit moves from an individual account to the trial balance. How does the trial balance? How does a balance sheet get populated from a trial balance? I think all of those foundational um, essence of accounting will have to be simulated, even though it might all be automated one day. We are looking to a world where there will be simulations for candidates for people learning and on the CPA journey or on the CGMA journey. They will have to go through these simulations, and then as they get employed, the the specific establishments and enterprises will have to provide sandboxes where people can crash and burn, where they're asked to make decisions around this account doesn't reconcile. How do you go about finding the
Yes,
differences?
yes,
And so those things will be simulated by specific domain. You will need domain knowledge and domain expertise, which will only be able to be done in a bank, in their sandboxes, providing that environment where you're constantly learning how to land the plane without an engine. And if it's a simulation, you crash, it's fine. You're not impacting the business. So there is a world of simulation that is coming, that professions have to create for initial professional proficiency and initial what we call IPD, and then in enterprises, everyone will need to put their employees through a certain type of simulation to learn
yes.
exactly the things that you're talking about, Eric.
So you bring up simulations. It makes me think of aircraft. You're an avid aviator. I've never experienced this, but I know that pilots, many of them have the autopilot functionality available to them. They still need to know how to land a plane.
Absolutely.
So one of the things we need to make sure we do is we make sure people going through the simulations don't feel like we're sending them back to kindergarten.
Yes,
This is equipping them for their stewardship of the
absolutely.
function, even when the
Absolutely.
machine's doing the nuts and bolts. It's
Right.
vital for their understanding. It's not remedial.
Correct. Exactly right. Pilots are forced to do a number of manual landings out of every number of auto landings. They just have to.
You still need to know how.
Exactly.
In the
Yeah.
accounting, it's not life or death,
Yeah, it
usually,
is.
but
But
still, it needs to be done well. Needs to be
yeah,
right.
yeah. You could end up in the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You don't want that for the
And
wrong
you
reasons.
and you might not be there to read the headline if it doesn't go well.
Right.
So
Exactly. Um,
I want to we need to wind up here in a minute. It's fascinating to me that what you did there is you brought us back to first principles, first technical principles. Even in an AI world, the first principles are still real. The debits and the credits. When I was at the bank, we still would use T accounts to walk through a complex transaction and make sure we
Absolutely.
understand it instead of just doing it in our
Absolutely.
head. We still need that ability to do that. And where did we start? We started with a leadership first principle, which is we're stewards. These first principles never go away.
Couldn't agree more. You will not get away from double entry accounting.
That's right.
I might be proven wrong, but those are foundations. And exercising controls and having controls and exercising stewardship and designing the right control systems will always be a requirement, even in a world that is fully automated.
Oh, this is good. Well, Ash, I'm suspecting we probably have some more conversations off in the future. I'm so glad you made time for this today. There's lots out here for all of us as steward leaders to be thinking about. Ash, thanks so much for taking time for this conversation.
Thank you, Eric. Looking forward to whenever we meet next. And I am sure that book, and good luck with the launch. Wishing you all the success around the launch of that book.
Well, very good. Appreciate that. Listeners, thanks so much. Ash, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for listening to Steward Leaders. If this conversation was helpful, you can find more episodes and additional resources at stewardleaders.com.
leadersleaderspodcast.com. Leadership is temporary. Stewardship is about forever.